We are very lucky to have a special guest that will be speaking to us today. But before we begin, I would like to acknowledge some special people in the audience. Paul Rousseau and Kathy Kretz, School Committee. Citizen of the Year, former Citizen of the Year, Dominic Camara. Former Citizen of the Year, Jack Dempsey. And welcome 5th and 6th graders. Remember, all school rules apply. And now I'll turn it over to Mr. Tucci.
Good morning, McGlynn Middle School and grade 5 here at the McGlynn. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce you to a gentleman that is a person that comes from Medford. An individual that came from seats much like yours, classrooms much like yours, sat in front of teachers much like yours, that paved the pathway in his life that is extraordinary. You're going to hear a little bit about his story here today. Part of his story, and the reason why he's here, is because he loves to give back to the city of Medford. I've heard Mr. McGillivray speak on a few different occasions. One to my students at Medford High School when I was the vice principal at Medford High School, and on another occasion when I was in the audience at the Mustang Hall of Fame. His story is inspiring. You know, put goosebumps on my arms every time I heard him. And part of the reason why it was so special to me is because he shares something we all share. He's from Medford, and he's never forgot that. And he's never forgot that he wants to give back and do something extra special. He's accomplished all these wonderful things in his life, and I'll get to those in just a moment. But he takes it to the next level by giving back and sharing his story of how he's accomplished his goals with you guys. Because the hope is that you all can dream big. And that's his message today. Dream big, because if you dream big, the world can be yours. And you can do extraordinary things. And it is amazing some of the things he's accomplished in his life. So who is Mr. Dave McGillivray? Mr. Dave McGillivray, like I said, is a product of the city of Medford. He is a 1972 graduate of Medford High School. He's not only a graduate of Medford High School, but he's also the class valedictorian, which means that he was the #1 top student in his class that year in 1972. He's a philanthropist. He's an athlete. He's the director of the Boston Marathon, which obviously is of notoriety across the entire nation. He's an individual that I think has a very important message for all of you. Okay, and I know, like I said, it's a message that will resonate with everybody too as well in this audience. So it is my distinct pleasure to introduce you to Mr. Dave McGillivray.
Thank you. Thank you so much. First of all, Nick just gave my speech, so does anybody have any questions? I'm kidding. First of all, I just want to say to this group how honored I am and privileged to be back here in Medford speaking to all of you. I've been very, very fortunate to have given over 1,900 motivational speaking appearances to every conceivable type of group you can imagine, from kindergartens, high schools, colleges, business groups, sales forces, all over the United States and literally all over the world. But this is very special to me because for me, this is where it all started. Right here in Medford. And anything that I might sort of be, I achieved in my life, it was all because of what I learned here in the city of Medford. I also want to thank Dominic Camara for sort of helping to host this, the Citizens of the Year organization. He does fantastic amount of work with the group that obviously has already accomplished so much in the city of Medford just to be a named Citizen of the Year. So to have Dominic here and Jack and myself as a Citizen of the Year, I was Citizen of the Year about 110 years ago. But, you know, at the same time, it was an honor then, and it's still an honor to be a member of that prestigious group. I always like to ask first questions of the audience so I know who I'm talking to. So first question is this. How many people in the audience run? Raise your hand if you run a little. That's pretty cool. All right. How many people in the audience walk? Raise your hand. Okay. What do the rest of you do? Eat and drink and party like rock stars? No? Okay. So, anyone here in the audience ever run in a road race? Just run in a race. Look at that. Holy cow. Anyone here who has not run in a race, maybe someday you'd like to? Raise your hand if you'd like to run in a race someday. Yeah? You'd like to run in a race? Anyone else? Raise your hand high if you'd like to run in a race. Okay, what's your name? Xavier? Come here for a second, Xavier. Come on up here. Everyone give Xavier a round of applause. Come here, Xavier. No, louder, louder, louder. There we go, Xavier. Look at that, he gets a medal. See that? Now, Xavier, what the heck just happened? Other than me embarrassing you in front of all your friends, what just happened is what happens at the finish line of the Boston Marathon and other races all over the world all the time. And what happened was this. You know, when you decide to run your first race, you know what the toughest part is going to be? The toughest part of running your first race is signing the application. Is making the commitment to do that. That takes guts. So then the next thing you have to do is earn the right to do it. So you have to do the work, you have to train. And then you toe the line, and you answer the gun, and you run the course, and you cross the finish line, and you get a medal just like that. And you know what happens then? Magic happens. You go home feeling good about yourself, because you accomplished something that you worked hard at. See this medal here, Xavier? This medal says on the medal, my next goal is to earn my own medal. So the first time you run a race, you're going to earn your own medal, right? And on the back of this medal, believe it or not, is my home mailing address. So when you run your first race and get your own medal, you're going to mail this one back to me, because you have your own, okay? I've given out about 400 of these medals. You know how many have I gotten back? About 390 of them. So no pressure, Xavier, no pressure there. But let's give Xavier another round of applause. All right, go ahead, go back to your seat. I want to get that medal back someday, you know. All righty. So, sort of the whole title of my presentation is Dream Big. Because when I was little, growing up in Medford, which I really didn't grow up, when I was little, but I had big dreams. I had big dreams. And what I dreamed about, I wanted to be one thing and one thing only. I wanted to be one thing, and that was, I wanted to be an athlete. I wanted to be an athlete. I wanted to play for the Celtics and for the Red Sox and for the Patriots. I wanted to be an athlete so bad, but unfortunately for me, I was little. So whenever my friends would, what we used to call buck up for sides, pick sides, they would say, I'll get Ralph, and I get Tom, and I get Xavier, and I get Ralph, and Pete, and then Jane and Sally. They would even pick the girls over me back then. And to me, that was sort of difficult to overcome, as to why aren't they picking me? And then I'd go out for some of the team sports, and I'd always be the last one cut. So that was tough. What I learned back when I was your age is the concept of rejection, that sometimes you don't always get picked. And so what do you do with that? How do you overcome that? And so I didn't dream, when I was in Medford, I didn't dream about being a race director. That's not what I dreamed about. I dreamed about being an athlete. That's my head on Larry Bird's body. Larry played for the Boston Celtics. So I would go home every day and dream about being an athlete, about being like Larry. That's what I dreamed about. And so here's my friends bucking up for sides on the playground in Medford.
1, 2, 3, shoot!
That's really where it all started.
Right.
The first person picked was the best, and the last one picked was the worst. I had to go home every day with that feeling. Say, how do I overcome this? How do I prove to them that I'm not the worst, that I am good? So that was tough. That was tough. And what I would do is, sometimes after being the last pick, I'd go home and I put a sign over my bed, and the sign would say, "Please God, make me grow." Well, he must have been on vacation or answering someone else's prayer, because he obviously didn't make me grow that much. Or did he? Or did he make me grow? Because I realize in retrospect, I did grow. I grew in other ways. I grew morally and ethically and spiritually and intellectually. I grew internally, because folks, that's where it all matters. It's who you are inside, not who you are physically. So what did I start to do? Started to run, because nobody can cut you from running. You just run, go. And that's what I did. Here I am, in Medford, running on the track. I ran in Hormel Stadium right here. That's where I got my start, right across the street, right here in Hormel Stadium. And I said, I want to be an athlete, and this is the path. So instead of going left and being depressed and feeling denied and going a whole different direction, I said, no, I'm going to find a different path. I'm going to find a different path. And I chose running. So then, right here in Medford, when I was 12 years old, right here in Spot Pond, okay, we're near Wright's Pond, I turned 12 on my birthday, and I went from my house, I'm North Medford, I ran around the pond and came home. It was 6 miles, and I thought that was pretty good. I ran 6 miles on my 12th birthday. Then I had cake and ice cream, and I said, well, I should probably burn this off, so I went and did it again. So I ran 12 miles on my 12th birthday. I thought that was pretty cool. And then when I turned 13, I ran 13 miles, and 14 miles, and 15 miles. You can sense a pattern here, right? So when I turned 54, I started at the finish line of the Boston Marathon, ran to the start, ran back to the finish, and ran into Fenway Park in front of 32,000 people. And I did it for the benefit of the Jimmy Fund. And you all know the Jimmy Fund is the fundraising arm of the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. And here I am running into Fenway, and here are 2 Jimmy Fund clinic kids running the last 100 yards with me inside Fenway Park. So then when I turned 60, I'm 63 now, when I turned 60, what did I do? Ran 60 miles. Ran 60 miles, and then last year I ran 63, and then this year in August, I'm scared to death, but I'm planning to run 64 miles on my 64th birthday. So people say to me all the time, other than, are you crazy? They say, what are you going to do when you turn 90? And I said, well, I don't know. You know, I'll figure that out when I turn 90. First of all, I want to be breathing, and then get out of bed, and then I'll decide, right? But I have a motto in my life, and here it is right here. This is what I think about every day of my life, that it's my game, so it's my rules. In other words, it's your life. It's your life to do with it as you see fit. Yes, you have to pay attention to your parents, you have to pay attention to your teachers, you have to pay attention to your coaches and your mentors. You have to pay attention to them. They're guiding you, they're helping you out. But at the end of the day, it's up to you. It's in your hands to decide how you want to live each day of your life. And for me, I chose a certain path of setting goals and trying to accomplish and dreaming big. So then I heard about this event in Boston. And my grandfather was a supporter of my athleticism. And I called him up one day and I said, Grandpa, I'm going to run that race in Boston. He goes, oh, they call that the Boston Marathon. I said, oh, well, that's a good name for it, because I'm going to run it. So he said, okay, fine, I'll meet you at the 24-mile point. I said, deal. So here's my grandfather. He lived right in Boston, the Boston area. So here I was in Medford. I was a senior at Medford High School. My brother drove me to the start. The gun fired. I took off. I'm running. I got to the hills in Newton, around 18 miles. Bam! Down I go, flat out, in the Newton Hills. And I got taken to the Newton Wellesley Hospital in a police cruiser. An officer picked me up and he brought me to the hospital. And I got to the hospital and I called my parents here in Medford and I said, can you come pick me up? And they said, where are you? I said, I'm in the Newton Wellesley Hospital. They said, what are you doing there? I said, never mind, come pick me up. So they came, they picked me up. I got home and I called my grandfather. There's no answer. I called him again, there's no answer. Finally, he answers the phone at 9 o'clock at night and I said, Grandpa, where have you been? He said, Dave, where have you been? I've been waiting for you all night. The old man goes by, the street sweepers go by, and no Dave. I said, yeah, I know, I failed. He said, you what? I said, I quit. He said, nah, you didn't quit. I said, I did. What'd I do? He said, you learned. I said, great. What'd I learn? He said, you learned that you cannot go along in life and set reckless goals. He said, you had no business being in that race. You know, you didn't earn the right. Like Xavier's going to earn the right because you're going to train. I didn't train, right? I didn't train for this. He says, that was a reckless goal. I said, okay. He says, I'll cut another deal with you. I said, what's that? He said, you train. There's a novelty. You train and I'll be there waiting for you again next year. I said, deal. Well, 2 months later, my grandfather passed away. And I said, I gotta do this, I gotta do this. I was 18 years old, and I trained. And finally, the day before that year's Boston Marathon, I got sick. My parents said, you can't run. You're too sick. I said, can you give me something that very few other people in my life have given me? And they said, what's that? I said, can you give me a chance? I just want to try. Maybe I don't feel well today, but tomorrow's a different day, right? Every day is a different day. If you feel lousy today, don't fret, because tomorrow's a new one. You get another shot at this, folks. That's okay. They said, okay, fine, you can do it. And I said, great. And all of a sudden, my parents drive me out to the start. I take off. I get to 5 miles. Ugh, it was awful. I had nothing in the tank. And I finally got to the halfway point, and I see my parents on the side of the road. And there's my mother. What's my mother doing? She's crying. Why? Because that's what mothers do. They cry. Why? Because she's worried about me. They're going through more pain than I'll ever go through. Your parents are worried about you. Your teachers are worried about you. Your friends are worried about you. And then I saw my father next to my mother, and what's he doing? He's taking pictures of my mother crying. You know? Cry over here, you know. And I said, okay, I'm vindicated, I'm gonna go. And I kept going. I got to the Hilton Newton where I dropped out the year before, and I'm doing the survivor shuffle over the hills. And I get up over the hills, and finally I got to 21.5, and bam, down I go again. I dropped out again. You know, in the newspapers here in Medford, believe it or not, that's me, says, Dave running in memory of grandfather. I said, I gotta do this. I'm doing it in memory of my grandfather who taught me that lesson about earning the right, and I did train. Why is this happening? And all of a sudden I drop out again. So I'm sitting on the curb right there. Now, can you imagine a little kid, a young man, you know, has this goal of being an athlete. He gets cut from the teams. He's the last pick. He drops out of his first marathon. He drops out of his second marathon. I mean, truly, can you say, like, loser? Because that's what's going through my head. Like, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe this wasn't meant to be. And then a defining moment happened. What do you mean defining moment? They happen in our lives all the time. There's something that happens almost every day in your life that is a defining moment, and you have to seize the moment. And the defining moment was, I looked behind me, and there was this. And that's my grandfather's tombstone. And he was buried in the Evergreen Cemetery, right on the marathon course. I didn't even know he was on the marathon course. And he said he'd be there. There he is. Now he's there spiritually, maybe not physically, right? But my grandfather said he would be there waiting for me. And I realized he was there. There he is. And I picked myself up and I said, I gotta keep going. And I kept going and I kept going, and I finished in 4.5 hours. And I said, when I crossed the finish line of that year's race, I'm gonna run this race every year for the rest of my life in honor and tribute to the lesson that my grandfather taught me about earning the right to do this. And I've run it for the last 46 years in a row as a result.
McGillivray ran his first marathon in 1972 when he was 17. His grandfather said he'd wait for him in Coolidge Corner. Shame that he never made it that far. McGillivray went home to call his grandfather.
I apologized vehemently to him, saying I failed, I let you down. He said, no, you didn't. He said, you learned. He said, now you got to train, you got to do your homework, you got to earn the right to do this race. So he cut a deal. He said, I'll wait for you, I'll be there next year, just like I was this year.
But 2 months later, his grandfather died. McGillivray ran the next year despite a bout with the flu. Like so many others, when he hit the 100 mile, he felt he couldn't go on.
All of a sudden I turned around and I looked and I realized, you know, I have been here before. Last year, I was here for the burial of my grandfather. He's buried right in this cemetery, in the Evergreen Cemetery. And something overcame me to make me realize that maybe physically he wasn't here, but spiritually he was. He said he'd be here. And he was on the marathon course.
McGillivray finished the marathon that year and has for 30 years since. Now, as the race director, he runs things during the day and runs the course at night.
I guess, you know, in no other race can anyone say that they're proud and honored to be the last finisher in the race, as I am to say that about the Boston Marathon.
So the comeback is always stronger than the setback. Remember that. That's a strong, powerful message. So going back to my game, my rules, I ran the race for 15 years in a row, then I got offered the job to direct it. Now, how can I turn that down? I dreamed about running in it one day. I never dreamed about directing it. And all of a sudden, now I'm going to be in charge of the whole race. How can I turn it down? So I took the job. But then I was standing at the finish line of the race that year, and I'm high-fiving everyone, but I felt really sad and sick because I hadn't run it. So I tapped a state police trooper on the shoulder, and I said, "Officer, will you do me a favor?" He said, "What?" I said, "Will you drive me back to the start?" He said, "Why? Did you forget something?" I said, "Yeah, I forgot to run." So he drove me back out at 8 o'clock at night, and I ran the whole race by myself, finished dead last, 11 o'clock at night. Maybe a couple of pigeons and squirrels were waiting there, and that was it. And I finished last, and I finished last in this race every year for the last 31 years. And the lesson here is my game, my rules, right? My game, my rules. Finishing last, I finished. And I lived up to my commitment to myself and to my grandfather that I was going to run this race every year for the rest of my life. And so 46 years in a row, finishing the Boston Marathon. So then a friend of mine had biked from Medford, Mass, to Medford, Oregon. And I thought, my goodness, if he can bike across the country, I can run across the country. Well, what an idiotic idea that is, right? Because biking and running are a little bit different, eh? But no, I said, I'm going to do this. So I made the commitment to do it. I trained really hard for 4 years, and I did. So I ran from Medford, Oregon to Medford, Massachusetts. 3,452 miles in 80 days. I averaged about 45, 50 miles every single day, running across the United States. Never took one day off. And I was working at the John Hancock Tower at the time, and I looked out and I saw Fenway Park, and I saw a sign out in right field, and it said, "Help make a dream come true, support the Jimmy Fund." And I wasn't even sure what the Jimmy Fund was at the time, and I picked up the phone and I called the Jimmy Fund, I realized what it was, and I said, "I'm going to do this for the benefit of the Jimmy Fund." And that's what I did. Ran across the United States for the benefit of the Jimmy Fund. And here I am, running through the desert. And it was funny because I went into the clinic to visit with the kids who were being treated. And I saw a sign in the Jimmy Fund clinic and it said, "God made only so many perfect heads. The rest of them have hair on it." And what that means is that these kids are ill and they're getting chemotherapy and radiation and stuff, but they're believing, they're trusting they're going to get better. They have the courage and the guts to say, "I'm going to beat this." And they do. And they beat it. And that sign meant an awful lot to me as I'm trying to get through 120 degrees in the desert, running over the Rocky Mountains and so forth. So I was the original Forrest Gump, to be honest with you. I don't know why this guy gets all the credit, but that's Tom Hanks running across the country a whole bunch of different times. So it's pretty interesting. So the original Forrest Gump, averaging 45 to 50 miles every single day. And it was interesting, my mother, there was no one in my family, knock on wood, who was ill or sick. I just felt an obligation and responsibility to help those who were less fortunate. And that's why I chose the Jimmy Fund. And wouldn't you know it, about a few years after I had finished that run here in Medford and then Fenway Park, my mother passed away of lung cancer. And I said, where's the justice in that? I'm trying to help those who are less fortunate, and then my mother even succumbs to this illness. But then I picked up her diary, and what was interesting, she was writing notes as I was running across the country, was, he's been going constantly. Once Dave starts running, maybe he'll be able to get some rest. Organizing this was a lot more difficult than actually doing the run itself, and she was exactly right. That when I was running, I was in the moment. I was doing what I wanted to do, and I was actually feeling better as I was running than when I wasn't running. So 80 days across America. I started ceremonially in the Kingdome when the Red Sox were playing the Seattle Mariners, and I finished in Fenway Park. Ironically, the Seattle Mariners were playing the Red Sox that same day. It was funny because as I ran in, the Seattle Mariners were looking at me and go, "Didn't we just see that guy across in Seattle? How did he get here?" And so here are all the Red Sox cheering me on. It was funny because they said to me, "Well, run in from the wall, the green monster, run to home plate, and do a wave and get off." And I said, "Okay, fine." Well, I get out on it, and I kept going around and around, and I said, "I'm not getting off this field. I just ran across a continent, They can wait for me." So here it is.
Mariners face the Boston Red Sox. The highlight of this pregame program will be the entrance of David McGillivray.
David McGillivray.
who is 24 years old.
He ran coast to coast to raise money for the Jimmy Fund.
Coast to coast run from Medford, Oregon to Medford, Massachusetts.
He has just run 80 days, averaging 43 miles a day at Fenway Park greeting for Dave McGillivray.
When I crossed the finish line after my 3,452-mile run across the country was not just personal accomplishment, but there were people who finally gave me a chance in life. I want to teach other people that when they are being rejected by others or themselves, that there's always another avenue to take. And that's the sort of motto that I've lived by all my life.
So I did that, and then 25 years later, I said, I want to try this again. I got 9 other guys together, and we relayed across the United States from San Francisco back to Boston. And then, I don't know if anybody has heard of this event called the Ironman Triathlon. It's a 2.4-mile rough open ocean water swim, followed by a 112-mile bicycle ride through the lava fields and finishing up with a marathon. Well, I read about that in Sports Illustrated, and I went, yeah, right up my alley. You know, I want to do this. I had 2 problems. One is I didn't know how to swim. Problem 1. And problem 2 was I didn't own a bike. So I said, I better figure this out. So I figured it out, earned the right to do it, went to Hawaii in 1980, did it in 1980, then went back in 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, and 89, and kept on doing the Ironman Triathlon. And then a friend of mine said, hey, you ran across the country, why don't you run up the east coast of America and want to do it with me? I said, sure, let's do it together. So we did. A guy by the name of Bob Hall. Bob was the pioneer of wheelchair racing in America. And here's a physically challenged person pushing a wheelchair 1,522 miles up the entire eastern seaboard of the United States to raise money for those who are less fortunate. So it's pretty amazing the accomplishments of some people who are even physically disabled to be able to do it. And then my brother works for a place called the Carroll Center for the Blind in Newton. He says, hey, you're doing all this running, why don't you raise money for the Carroll Center? I said, what do you want me to do? He says, why don't you run the Boston Marathon and raise money? I said, no one's going to give me any money just to run a marathon. And no one did back then. Now there's a lot of people running in the race, raising money for a lot of worthwhile causes, and we're raising about $34 million every year by people running in the marathon. But I said, back then that didn't happen. So I said, well, maybe I'll figure this out. And I met with those who are visually impaired, and I said, I'm going to do that year's Boston Marathon and raise money for the Carroll Center. So I did, and there I am, finishing. I ran blindfolded, and I had 2 guides with me, and they guided me the entire course. And it was interesting because I've run 155 marathons, and that's the only one I don't remember, because I never saw it. I never saw it. What that taught me, in all these runs that I do, there are lessons learned. You know, what that taught me is about dependence and independence. I was dependent upon them to get me through the course. And I never want to put myself in that position again. You know who the most important person in this room is right here, right now? The most important person? You. You are. You have to take care of yourself. Because if you take care of yourself, you don't have to burden other people to have to take care of you for you, and you put yourself in a position to help those who are less fortunate. So that's how I live my life, to try to take care of me so I can help others. Kind of is a good formula, right? And that's how I got through that particular. And then I did a 24-hour run, finished halftime at the New England Patriot football game at Gillette Stadium in front of 60,000 people. People say to me all the time, geez, you know, you finish in all these stadiums. How come? I said, because if I finished in front of my house, I'd have my mother, my father, 6 pigeons, and 3 squirrels, right? So I'm trying to create an awareness for a cause, and I'm trying to bring attention, and I'm trying to raise some money. So people ask me all the time, well, what's your greatest accomplishment? Like, you've done all these crazy things, what's your greatest one? And I said, well, that's a good question, I don't know. Well, my greatest one is my next one. I said, I don't want to live off my laurels, I don't want to live off my past. Yeah, I want to use it as a confidence builder. What I did in the past gives me confidence to set new goals going ahead. And that's what I try to do. So my next goal was this event. It's called the World Marathon Challenge. I just did it 4 months ago. And at 63 years old, I was the 2nd oldest person to do it. So what I did was I ran 7 marathons in 7 days on 7 continents. So we flew down to Cape Town, South Africa, got together as a team. 50 of us did it. We flew down to Antarctica, ran a marathon there, jumped on a plane, flew back to Cape Town, South Africa, ran a marathon there, flew to Perth, Australia, ran a marathon there, got back on the plane, flew to Dubai in Asia, ran a marathon there, got back on the plane, ran to Lisbon, Portugal, ran a marathon there, flew down to Cartagena, Colombia, ran a marathon there, and flew up to Miami and finished up with our 7th marathon in 7 days in Miami. Why did I do that? Just because. Because it was another goal. It was another goal of mine, and I felt like, you know, I want to see if I can accomplish something like that. But I committed to it, and then I trained for a whole year for it, and went there and was able to do it. Here we are running in Antarctica. In Antarctica. It's a desert. It's a desert, and it's just ice and snow, and that's it. And that's it, running 26.2 miles, you know, and free, you know, obviously below zero weather and so forth. So I had a video, but I won't show. Here I am in Perth, Australia, and we ran about 11 o'clock at night till 3 in the morning, and finishing in Perth, and then finishing here in Miami, and got a whole bunch of medals. Got like seven or eight medals for that. So people say to me all the time, I got 10 more minutes. People say to me all the time, well, what do you really want to be when you grow up? I mean, I said, well, first of all, what makes you think I want to grow up? But what I want to be, and I saw this billboard, literally, right on the highway, right here, on Route 93. I don't know if you've ever seen it. This billboard, and I said, that's it. That's what I want to be. No, not a Girl Scout. I know what some people do. I don't want to be a Girl Scout. I want to be an accomplisher. That's it. You may not know today what you want to be when you grow up. Like whether you want to be a nurse, a doctor, an accountant, technology, an athlete, whatever. That's okay. But what you should get into your head is that you want to accomplish things in life, whatever that is. I'm not up here telling you should run. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm up here saying that you should never underestimate your own ability. You should never underestimate your own ability. So here I am finishing dead last at night. So lessons learned. I've learned that there are no mistakes, only lessons, and that the failed experiments are as much a part of the process as the experiment that ultimately works. What does that mean? That means that truly, there's only one way you fail in life. One way only. You know what that is? If you don't try. If you don't even give it a go, you failed. But if you try and you don't necessarily achieve your accomplishment, you didn't fail. You learned. Then there's tomorrow. You go try it again, and try it again, and try it again, like I did with the marathon. It's the same thing, right? We should always live our dreams. Dream big. And those who say it cannot be done should not interrupt those who are doing it. In other words, if you say you want to do something and your friend says, you can't do that, or you shouldn't do that, don't pay attention to them. If you truly want to do it, Xavier, if you want to run a race, run a race. Don't let someone say you can't do that, right? You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in yourself. So I wrote a book also called The Last Pick. People say to me all the time, what's the book about? And I say, it's about the person reading it. What do you mean by that? I said, every one of you, you're in this book. I don't name you personally maybe, but you're in the book because you can identify with all this. We all have our ups and downs. No one gets by in life unscathed. You know, we all have our challenges. You might look at me and say, oh, he's so lucky. I've got a nice family, he's got a nice job, yeah, but I've got my challenges too. You know, we all do. It's how you process them. You know, you don't want to be full of self-pity. Why me all the time? You're so lucky to be here at the school, in this city, with these teachers, getting an education, having your health. Don't squander that, because there's a lot of other kids who aren't here right now. You know what we all have in common? All of us in this room, we all have one thing in common. I don't even know most of any of you, but I know we have something in common. You know what that is? We woke up this morning. Not everyone did. That's a gift. That's a gift. You had nothing to do with that. What happens during the day, though, that's all in your hands, right? So that's why I wrote this book called Dream Big. You know, and it's about setting goals. So we should always set goals for ourselves, not limits. And the worst injustice you could ever do to yourself is to underestimate your own ability. Another thing that's important to remember is there's no such thing, in my opinion, as an individual accomplishment or achievement. Because you have to surround yourself with good people. You know, if you accomplish something, Xavier, if you get your medal, yeah, you might have run the course and earned the medal by running the course. But there's a lot of other people that supported you to get you to the starting line. And again, always give thanks. Always sort of understand that there are people around that also deserve credit for your achievements because they're the ones who sacrificed or helped you get to that point. We all have ability, it just takes a matter of having enough guts to sort of understand that and draw it out of ourselves. I also learned in all of this that no matter where in this country my car breaks down, I'll be able to run home. I have an extra pair of shoes in my car all the time, so I'll be able to run home, right? So, again, in my opinion, and everything I say here is, I'm not trying to lecture you. I mean, I'm not a know-it-all. I can only give you my opinion from my personal experiences and what has worked for me. And in my opinion, the most important thing in life is family. It's family. You know, your parents, your siblings, your family. And here I am with my family, my wife and kids, and of course the picture is taken at a road race. I'm multitasking, right? I'm multitasking, so it's really important. So see this little boy, his name is Jack. And Jack's brother, Joe, had an illness, a heart illness, called cardiomyopathy. And he didn't make it. Joe didn't make it. He died at age 6 because he was on the donor list and he was hoping to get a new heart and nothing came. And then Jack was born a few years after Joe. And as luck would have it, or wouldn't have it, Jack also had the same illness, cardiomyopathy. So Jack here has the same disease as his brother, who passed away a couple of years ago. And I befriended him because I said, he's my hero. You know, he's the man. You know, he's got to survive. We got to figure out a way to keep Jack alive. And a month ago, I got a text from his father saying they found a donor and they rushed him to Children's Hospital and they gave him a new heart. Now, Jack's a healthy boy right now because he got a second chance. And that's what life's all about. You know, not ever underestimating yourself. You know, understanding that every day is a gift. And see these medals around Jack's neck? You saw all those medals I earned in World Marathon Challenge? I gave them all to Jack. Because he deserves them more than I do, right? Because as far as I'm concerned, he's the inspiration. And that's his sister right there. All you need is love, right there. And Jack ran in my little celebrity mile. I had a celebrity mile a year ago, and he ran in it. So, at the end of my life, I'd like to think I gave everything I had, and then some, until I simply run out of time, which I pretty much just have. I'll just leave you with this. Again, you know, when I was growing up here in Medford, I didn't do anything bad to my body. You know, I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I didn't do any of those things. Why? Because it's my body. It's my body, and I felt like I had an obligation to take care of myself so I can then, in turn, like I said before, take care of other people. So that's all I'm trying to tell you. Last piece is this. You know, all the running I've done, I've run about 150,000 miles, and I always thought I was like Superman, right? I'm invincible, nothing can get me down. Wrong. And a couple of years ago, I was out running, and I could feel some difficulty breathing. And I was like, what is this? And I went to the Mass General Hospital, and they did all these tests on me, echocardiogram, stress tests, EKGs, everything, and they said, no, you're fine. I said, I'm not fine, I can't breathe. I said, you gotta give me the big boy test. You gotta look under the hood. So they did me a CAT scan and an angiogram, and they found out, and the doctor comes in, and he goes, here. He showed me that I had severe coronary artery disease, which isn't good. I said, how did I get that? Genetics or self-inflicted? Maybe a little bit of both. And I turned to the doctor, and I said, hey, I got one question to ask you. He said, what? I said, is this reversible? He said, well, it depends. I said, depends on what? He said, depends on the person. I said, well, you're looking at him. I'm right here. You know? He said, would you have discipline? Yeah, I think so. Long story short, I changed everything. I said, I can't have bad habits. I gotta fix this problem on my own. I got myself into this mess, I gotta fix it. And 6 months later, I had another angiogram and showed that I reversed my own illness by over 50%. Why? Because I wanted to live. I wanted to stick around for a while. I want to run my 64th birthday. I want to run my 90th birthday. You know, so I took care of myself. That's all I'm telling you, folks. Please take care of yourself. Thanks very much for having me.
again, I want to thank Mr. McGillivray for giving his time, his impassioned speech, and lending us, that great message to always strive for your best, and to never give up, and to be an individual that is resilient too as well, and keeps fighting. These are such important lessons for all of us here at this school, and I very much thank him for that. I also want to thank, once again, the Medford Citizens of the Year, Mr. Kamara, Mr. Dempsey, and also Mr. McGillivray for bringing us this wonderful presentation. Thank you to the Citizens of the Year for giving back once again to as well. And I also want to finally acknowledge a wonderful guest, a wonderful individual that is in attendance today, Mr. Paul Donato, State Representative Paul Donato, right here.